Thanks for joining us. I thought we'd just have a bit of a conversation really about ESG and in particular the indoor environment, because I think, right now there's been a lot of focus on the indoor environment through COVID, and now we have new strains knocking at our doorsteps. It's even more infectious, so it's more important than ever. I think, in both of our roles, we've got a lot on our plate trying to deal with all of this stuff. But we see out there a lot of different ratings in the sustainability space. We see things like GRESB is a term, Green Star is another rating system, NABERS is another rating system. So there are so many out there, and it'd be great to get your perspective on why do ratings in general from your point of view?
Thanks, Joe. So for ISPT, we have a stakeholder base that includes some of Australia's largest superannuation investors, and we have investments across a range of sectors. So for ISPT, it's really important, firstly, to have a robust, independently verified data and baseline for performance. And that sets a roadmap for us in order to invest into the right activities across the portfolio to improve performance. So each of those tools and ratings serves a very different purpose and are all really important in order to maintain that verification.
Yes, great. I see with GRESB seems to be more of an overarching and a sort of international rating scheme. And Green Star and NABERS are Australian born. Are there any sort of reasons you've picked specific ratings? Because I see, and there's other ratings out there, as you know, like the WELL building standard, and Reset is another rating system, particularly for the indoor environment. And as a building professional, I've got to get across all of these ratings in case building owners want to rate their building in a certain way. So I'm really interested to know which ratings you choose, really, and why.
So the ratings all stem from one source of data, whether it's electricity consumption, gas or water, or in the space of indoor environment, you've got noise and carbon monitoring, what have you. So it stems from one source of data. What we do is slice and dice that data to give different stakeholders a view around ISPT's impact and contribution to environmental initiatives and creating positive change. So the GRESB rating and survey tool really is for our investors to benchmark ISPT's environmental, social and governance performance in comparison to other owners that hold their investments. And that's a global system. As you said, Joe, we've got then Green Star and NABERS that are local tools. And for us, we see that our customers are the ones who really want to see that we are aligned with their aspirations and that we're holding ourselves accountable to deliver a level of performance and quality that allows them to get their job and execute on their strategies.
Yeah. So, you mentioned customers. So do you mean tenants?
So ISPT's customers are our tenant partners. So they are the people who pay us the rent. And then we have our building community. So in retail, it's the community at large who might be the shoppers in amongst our retail centres. And then the building community in our commercial buildings are the workers within our buildings.
Yes, great. And I see with the rating systems, I've been looking at the Sustainability Portfolio Index from NABERS. I think that's a fantastic tool for displaying performance in that field, and you can see there's an energy section, there's a water section, there's an indoor environment section, there's a waste section. So it'd be good to sort of hone in or drill down a bit into the indoor environment section. And just sort of, I suppose, where does that fit into, your ISPT strategy, long term in buildings?
So in terms of our ESG strategy, First and foremost, we're committed to delivering an enduring commitment to ESG excellence. So we're a long-term holder of property. And what that means, Joe, is that we're investing in our buildings for long-term financial, social and environmental outcomes. So the NABERS Portfolio Index allows us to be able to benchmark specifically those indicators and metrics that you've mentioned in amongst our peer group at a very granular level. In terms of where indoor environment sits within our ESG strategy and that commitment to ESG excellence, it's probably worth just breaking down what is included within the NABERS IE assessment tool. And I know that you do a lot of ratings for ISPT. So perhaps if you want to talk about that, and then I'll talk about how it sits in the context of our ESG strategy.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Thanks for that. Well, in terms of, rating the indoor environment, it's a lot more difficult than rating a property for energy usage, for instance. So, you've got a meter at the delivery of energy to the building, and you're monitoring that constantly. So you can easily measure how much energy you're using. I suppose normalising that energy use becomes where it may be subjective. How many people are in the building, how often it's running or how it needs to run, etc. With the indoor environment, you've got more parameters that you have to look at. We look at thermal comfort, and that's made up of parameters themselves, like air temperature, but radiative temperature, or radiant temperature they call it. So that's hot or cold surfaces that also affect your thermal comfort. Then we've got indoor air quality that's got air pollutants in there. Carbon dioxide's a major one of that. It's the most significant factor in indoor air quality in the NABERS Indoor Environment tool. Then you've got carbon monoxide, and you've got particulates as well. And we've seen those vary over time in buildings. And then you've got the acoustic comfort side. So you've got those three elements. So you've got to try and have a rating system where you measure that in the building and then compare it to benchmarks and then get a star rating out of that. So with NABERS Indoor Environment, you can't measure all of those things all of the time. We're not quite there yet with sensor technology. So you do have to measure them throughout the building and representative areas in the building. And that's considered your once-off testing. Then the other section of it is looking at a data that's being constantly measured in the building, and one of those is temperature at the moment. All buildings have a lot of thermostats, and that's how they regulate the air conditioning, of course. And so that data is considered readily available, and we can look at 12 months of that and see where it fits in the ASHRAE comfort guidelines. And with those two, that's where you get your full ratings from. So I've seen, my experience with the ISPT portfolio is that it's very well developed, and looking at both of those aspects, the on-site testing for pollutants as well as the annual temperature data are main focuses with ISPT, and we've seen the ratings increase year on year. To, I'd say it would be the highest performing large portfolio, definitely in the SPI, above five stars. Is it even above 5.5 stars? So almost hitting 6 stars, which for anyone that is listening to this, NABERS has a rating scale of 0 to 6 stars. So 6 stars is the maximum you can get. So it's shown very well managed. In my experience, it's been one of the sort of most developed management of the indoor environment with regards to rating that I've come across. Yeah, in terms of that, you've got your customers and your investors. So I suppose looking at the indoor environment in that detail, what would you say is in it for them that you're doing these ratings and publicly, publicising them?
Yeah, so that goes back to why we have set out to hold ourselves accountable first and foremost, but really to drive those ESG outcomes focused on excellence. So our ESG strategy has been developed by consulting with ISPT's investors, customers and community, and around the issues of greatest importance to them. And so what we've heard through that process, Joe, is that in the context of the changing environment around us, health and safety remain of paramount importance to our customers, particularly off the back of COVID. And we've got to get people back to our buildings in a very safe way, not just in a safe way, but in a way that they know that we are acting on their comfort, their health, and their happiness. And being able to disclose that performance to them is very important. So for ISPT, we actively invest in the health, comfort, safety, and amenity of our customers. And we want to make sure that we continually disclose that and continually rate using those independent third-party verified tools to make sure that we are benchmarking ourselves and we have a pathway for improvement. On the investor side, our investors want us to derive positive financial outcomes for them, but in an environment where we're creating positive social and environmental outcomes as well. So again, for our investors, being able to benchmark our performance and to have that performance third-party verified, it's really a robust accounting mechanism for us to hold ourselves accountable and to be able to say, we've derived a fantastic financial return for you, as well as fantastic health and safety and environmental outcomes for ISPT's customers and communities as well. So that's how we position it from our ESG strategy perspective. And as I said, we've got some fantastic work that the teams invest in at the property level to make sure that we continually improve performance and really continue to derive those fantastic experiences for our customers and community.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. And I do hear that that you were mentioning this sort of independent verification a lot for this. So I've been involved in doing indoor air quality testing in buildings for 20 years now, and there's 50 at the start of that it was for risk compliance and not necessarily disclosing to tenants. And I've seen a change over time with full transparency to tenants and occupiers in the building, and through a rating system is a way to make it. It's third party verified. It's would be seen as non-biased, etc. for the owner. So I can see why that's been so important. And I thought I would add as well, in terms of what's in it for tenants, there's the OH&S, or the COVID safety aspect, and with the new strains being as infectious as measles, it's a paramount sort of, I would say, concern for tenants in buildings. But I think there's also the productivity aspect of it as well. So we've seen with buildings that perform well in NABERS, they have high ventilation rates with outside air. I think Australia does pretty well actually compared to the rest of the world in terms of air quality outside, and if you bring a lot of that inside, I think you're helping that as well.
If I can just add to that Australia is very uniquely positioned in terms of having very fresh and clean air. But again, across our portfolio, what we saw in the wake of the Black Summer bushfires in 2019 and 2020 was an infiltration of the smoke that was coming up from the south coast in New South Wales to Sydney. And we saw across the Sydney CBD that some of our neighbouring buildings had smoke alarms going off within their tenancies because of the smoke coming in through their outside air ventilation systems. So for ISPT, we didn't have that problem because we have active on-site managers and management systems that we're able to shut off the outside air. And this could be applied universally in cities where there is poor air quality from pollutants or what have you. But we were able to shut off the outside air and we didn't have that problem of smoke coming into our buildings. having the on-site management team and the active control of the systems in your buildings is also a way then for you to be able to maintain that excellent air quality.
Yeah, I think that sort of plays on to, looking at how you ISPT and the management teams have worked on their improvements over the years, whether it's with, capital projects or performance tuning. I'm thinking of, for that instance with the bushfires, many air conditioners have, can be controlled remotely, say shutting off outside air, etc. That can either be done by a person that sets that on their computer remotely or in the building, or it can be done by sensors, measuring the air quality. Is that something that ISPT, may be looking at as actually measuring the air quality, whether at all their buildings or a central station maybe, or looking at just the Department of Environment air quality, ambient air quality, to look at whether to bring in that outside air or not? Is that something ISPT is looking at? Or
yes, ISPT is very fortunate that across our commercial properties we have on-site building management teams across those buildings nationally. Where we have remotely managed properties, absolutely, remotely controlled and remotely managed technology is part of our strategy in terms of managing and optimising performance, not just across air quality, but in terms of energy and water as well. We've had sites where we've had water leaks in some of those sites, and we've not been able to detect that water leak for some time because the utility bill comes in each quarter, and we've been able to see that there's been a spike. So we've been able to learn from some of those instances that using sensor technology or even tapping into our building management control systems and making sure that they have metering technology that is in real time rather than just the utility meter is definitely an important part of our overall approach to being able to proactively monitor and manage. The other thing that I'll say, Joe, is that working with our building management team also includes working with our building management control systems contractors. So one of those contractors we've been working with, we have developed a real-time dashboard to be able to track indoor environment performance across a tenancy. And what we've done is being able to give access to that to a tenant for them to then be able to say, well, in my zone or where my desk is, what is the comfort conditions in that space? And is that somewhere that I want to sit? If it's really warm or a little bit cooler, is that somewhere where I'm going to be happy and being able to work at my best? So definitely the combination of the systems and the transparency of that are really important, both from a management perspective as well as from a customer comfort perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I've been thinking about this concept of, as we measure more and more of the indoor environment to greater detail, we need to take into consideration this sort of ownership of the air. As a building owner, you're providing enough clean and fresh air sort of to the floor plate. Then it's up to the tenant on how they deal with that air, in a sense, in terms of their design and their fit out, and how they use the space for the overall air quality impact on an individual. I see it's a two type thing. You have the owner and then also the tenant's responsible for that. And having a feedback loop like that means the tenant can make decisions within their own tenancy to maximise the air quality or thermal comfort for themselves. I've had a feeling that in the past owners have been a bit reticent or reluctant to really measure the indoor environment to a higher degree of accuracy, because they'll then be responsible for managing that to the nth degree, whereas I see there'll need to be a discussion at some stage between the responsibility of that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the industry as we get more and more sensors in place. I suppose, now we've got into that sort of detail, maybe we can sort of step back and think about, what's occurred over the years that you've been at ISPT, and, what would you think would be some major highs or major lows that you've experienced in your position there?
Yeah, so certainly we have been driving an embedded approach to ESG excellence across our organisation, and because we are fully funded by superannuation and we have a very strong purpose alignment across the organisation to generate returns on behalf of more than 50% of working Australians, we are very uniquely positioned with an aligned and empowered workforce to be able to achieve those amazing social, environmental and financial outcomes. Probably across my career though, Joe, I haven't been as fortunate in that space, and I'd say that people who've been working in the space of sustainability generally have really had to push for the value of ESG to be front and foremost a part of investment thinking. So there's been a very strong and encouraged environmental agenda. I think we're at the moment experiencing the drive around and value of seeing why a social sustainability agenda is important. But I think it has come a long way from where we were, let's say 15 years ago, where something like indoor environment quality was probably more a nice to have rather than a must. And now I think we're absolutely in a position of it being a must, and not just a nice to have, but really it is a ticket to the game and an expectation that we are holding ourselves accountable for providing safe, healthy, comfortable spaces to our customers and community. And that probably then leads into the highlight for me, Joe, is that the work that we are doing is absolutely seen and valued as being business critical. We are very well positioned at ISPT from having done our first NABERS Indoor Environment rating in 2012. In 2017, we achieved the first 6-star NABERS Indoor Environment rating in Australia. And as you mentioned, today we have 17 buildings rated at 6-star in our portfolio, and most of our buildings at 5.5-star NABERS IE and above. So we've been able to build on that early leadership and really embed it in just the way that we do business. But now we are seeing that it's becoming mainstream and far less of a debate around if we do something, but really for us now is how do we do it? And really how do we look to technology to enable some of these amazing outcomes? So as I said, we're working in the space of looking at real-time technology, providing that transparency to our tenant customers by using dashboards and apps, and partnering with a whole range of different organisations in our value chain to be able to deliver on that.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. I suppose, I think something that I've seen is that change of, the indoor environment data, if you like, or compliance or performance has been, something that hasn't been shown to tenants. And, I've got an example of a building where we've been testing since 1998. And that was all for compliance and all sort of for the owner to keep hush-hush. And then as it's gone on, we've been testing every year, and now our reports are provided to the tenants. And this is outside of a rating scheme, so they've sort of kept this, if you like, out of there, and it's just part of what they do now. And now it's an expectation of the tenant, and I think it works both ways. And it's been really good. Well, I think I'm quite proud of us being able to keep that data and be able to display that data historically to show that, for instance, we had a lot of queries during COVID, about what is the ventilation in the building that I'm in, and we could quite easily go back to our database of 20 years of testing and say, look, over 20 years you've had this much fresh air. This is based on carbon dioxide measurements, and that's good reassurance that the building is being managed well. And this is where you're at right now, because we were there 6 months ago type thing, without necessarily needing to have huge capital sort of, investment into that. That's why I've been happy to see that data that's been collected over many years can also be used, I think.
The correlation over performance over time is really important. So when we did that first rating in 2012 to now continuing that 10 years later, not only have we been able to correlate an improvement of noise or acoustic quality, focus around particulates and ventilation within an overall improvement in indoor environment, we've also been able to overlay that improvement of indoor environment with an improvement of energy consumption as well. So what we've heard in the industry is a misconception that good indoor environment comes at the expense of energy performance. And we've been able to debunk that myth by being able to correlate positive improvement on both of those metrics. So for ISPT, that's really important for us to continue to invest in both energy efficiency and indoor environment, and know that that's complementary to providing premium experience and efficient service for our customers.
I've also seen that graph and data from neighbours showing that's across the board as well, that increasing indoor environment scores doesn't mean that it's a decrease in your energy efficiency scores or your neighbours' energy scores. And I think that points to, better management, more and facility managers and site managers learning over time, because it is a complex. Running a building is complex, and a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved in running that. So it's getting that working together. Thanks very much for spending half an hour having a chat. I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's great to see what ISPT is doing in this space. So really appreciate your time, Alicia.
My pleasure.